Hello and welcome back to another episode of Job and boys who have way too much time to think on their hands. Uh, so I was just listening to Terrence McKenna talk about artists, and I didn't expect him to talk, right? I don't even know who he is, so if he did bad stuff, I'm sorry, but he was talking about an unconscious collective, which Carl Jung talks about as well. Um, and it's like the idea that all the knowledge. You know what? I have no idea what they meant by the unconscious collective. What I mean by it, though, is that like a possible reason for us being on Earth is that like we all have experiences, right? And those are to all like help everybody treat each other better, right? You should all be able to share in the experiences of life there is as it is, right? And it is important, right, that you live your life. God gave you the life, right? Regardless, so you might as well live it. I don't think he gave you this life so you could sit in your house and do nothing all day. You know, who knows? That's just an opinion. But yeah, they were talking about philosophers being like people who never grew up, right? Because they're always asking questions. Like, who needs the answer to that question? Which I get that. I get that wholeheartedly, right? Because at the end of the day, even I'm like, why do you need to know that? You know, nobody needs to know that to live their life. But apparently somebody needed to know. So, yeah. Job at this point needed to know, right? That's why Job was sauntering around being sad. Right, he was throwing dirt on his head. And Elihu still talking. Okay. Chapter 37. I think we're almost getting to it, by the way, the end of it. So we're in the middle of Elihu's proclamation of God's goodness and God's majesty. So let's continue. What was he saying before? He's judging people. He gives food in abundance. He gives their needs, right? He covers his hand with lightning. I don't know what that means. And commands it to strike. Acts of God, right? His thunder declares it. True, it does. So he's in charge of everything. Is that what majesty means? I don't know. Alright, chapter 37, verse 1. At this also my heart trembles and leaps from its place. Maybe that's him being funny because of the thunder. Hear attentively the thunder, maybe it was, of his voice, and the rumbling that comes from his mouth. He sends it forth under the whole heaven, his lightning to the ends of the earth. After its voice roars, he thunders with his majestic voice, and he does not restrain them with his voice when his voice is heard. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He does great things which we cannot comprehend, for he says to the snow, fall on the earth. Right. How would you even know? How would you even know how to do that? I can maybe get halfway there. I know how to make it rain. You just make a big fireball, right? Or what they do with seeding clouds, right? Is they're putting stuff in the clouds that heats. Alright, it's one of the two things, right? So in Naruto, Sasuke is fighting Itachi. Brothers. Fight to the death. Very sad. Sasuke is planning something kind of the whole time, right? And they go down the whole thing. They're doing genjutsu and the whole 9 yards, right? And he lets out this big fireball. He says, right, and a whole dragon comes out of his mouth and goes to Itachi, blows the roof off the arena, and lets out this enormous fireball into the atmosphere. And what that does is it heats up all the gas and it rises. And because air is matter and as such a liquid in sorts, it goes up, but it's gotta come down. And when it comes down, it cools rapidly and creates clouds, and then whatever moisture would be in those clouds will come out as rain. Yeah. And then with, I'm sure, all the ash and dust and debris with that would be coming down as well. Yeah. That's one way. Or I think what they do is they go up in the plains and they release a liquid, and the liquid in it cools the air rapidly, and that also creates clouds. So they seed the cloud, and they do it in the United Arab Emirates. That's the wrong thing. Sorry, Saudi Arabia. It might be the United Arab Emirates, but that also might just be an airline, and I might just be an idiot. But in that area, right, Saudi Arabia, I know for a fact, where they're building the line, that's where they're doing it. And it's a smart, like, in the moment thing. I'm not really sure of the long-term effects of, like, putting that kind of stuff in the air, couldn't say that it would be a good thing, But you're right. We can only come close. And even me saying that, I feel like the magicians that Pharaoh was using to try and recreate gods, plagues, just pales in comparison. So that's why, like, when they came up with the nuclear bomb, dude, that must have been a scary moment for a lot of people. And when they were testing everything, because, like, there's no way there weren't some people afterwards, and especially before, right, that were like, can we do it now, right? Can we just end the entire world? You can just play God then, right? Right. Now the rules have changed, and things are, I hate to say it, but, like, much more fake that way, right? Knowing that you can just end it all. With nuclear explosions, dude. That's crazy. Why even go that far? Understand that at the end of the day, that human depravity and pettiness and hate at the end of the day, right, had caused human beings to research and go into science and, in a way, right, worship another god, until they came up with that. So that's crazy. Interesting way to think. Maybe wrong. Who knows? Y'all are gonna decide. But let's go. Let's continue before before the nuclear winter falls. He does not restrain them when his voice is heard. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He does great things which we cannot comprehend. For he says to the snow, fall on earth. Likewise, to the gentle rain and the heavy rain of his strength. He seals the hand of every man, that all men may know his work. And beasts go into dens and remain in their lairs. For the chambers of the south comes the whirlwind, and cold from the scattering winds of the north. By the breath of God ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen. Also with moisture he saturates the thick clouds. He scatters his bright clouds, and they swirl about, being turned by his guidance. I think Elihu is saying, hey, Job, remember that rock that you're standing on, dude? That you've lived on for the last however many decades? Remember how you never had to tend to it once? And it just kept working on without the need of your intervention, Job. God did that. He did that before you were even alive. Before you were a sparkle in your father's eye. He did all that just for you. Just for this moment. Just for me to say this. Screw you, Job. You were wrong. You should have already had all your stuff back. People would have given you orphans at that point, right? You would have had a family in 5 minutes. Right? Family back. Wife already there. Family restored. Use the family then to just get your resources back. Boom. Everything back in a matter of weeks. God is great. God is good. Listen to God. Right. I don't know. Job, you're a fucking letdown, dude. I'm sorry. He's not a letdown. He's a letdown, though. He kind of is. Elihu. Keeping him up, right? He's wobbly. Job is wobbling right now. He's about to pass out. Elihu's the only one keeping him up. Feeding him some water. He said, you're going to be alright, buddy. It's been a long night. And they may do whatever he commands them on the face of the whole earth, the clouds. He causes it to come, whether for correction, or for his land, or for mercy. Those fireballs. You don't believe me? I read this yesterday just to verify that it happened. Chapter 1, verse 16. While he was still speaking, another also came and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. The fire of God fell from earth. That's in the first chapter. You know? So, I mean, Job, look, I get it. I understand. You know? I get it. I get where you're at. But you should have also realized that once somebody told you that the fire of God fell from earth, you should have maybe known something was up. You know? Something was amiss. Something was askew. Something with this scenario was not like the other things that had occurred, right? Because you're pretty bent out of shape about that. Like, you're bent out of shape about this, right? Job is very distraught that all of this has happened. He is probably racking his brain about the last 40 to 50 years, thinking what he could have possibly done wrong to deserve this. God destroyed the stuff. He had a hand in it. Trust that at the end of the day. When do you know the devil to be throwing fireballs? Never once. God does it. God been doing it, dude. So I don't know, right? I know, again, maybe backwards mentality, but I don't know. Again, probably a lot easier to say after the fact, looking back. But again, to look into the future. Just, God has a plan. God has a plan. Listen to this, O Job. Stand still and consider the wondrous works of God. Do you know when God dispatches them and causes the light of his cloud to shine? I don't. Well, I do. It's usually at like... See if I can look that up. See how messed up this is. Right. The sun is going to go down at 8:30 tonight, where I live. And the sun is going to come up at 5:26 tomorrow. So, Elihu, do you know when God dispatches them and causes the light of his cloud to shine? At 5:36 tomorrow morning. But, Job, that was not meant as aid to you. But it does kind of highlight that a little bit. You know, maybe we do know too much, you know? Maybe there is too much knowledge. Maybe knowing when the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning and be able to set a timer to that time and to be able to wait. I mean, maybe that is a beautiful thing in a certain, like, right and aspect, right? It's a beautiful thing to be able to do that. But at the same time, maybe it's not. Maybe it's, like, not so peaceful at the end of the day to be that kept track of. I don't know. Maybe it's required for most people, though. Gotta keep you on track. Gotta keep me on track, sorry. Do you know how the clouds are balanced? Whose wondrous works of him who is perfect in knowledge. Why are your garments hot? Because you're sitting in the sun. That's ridiculous. When he quits the earth by the south wind. When he quiets the earth by the south wind. With him have you spread out the skies, strong as the cast metal mirror. Maybe a little far removed to truly understand what he's trying to say right now. Why are your garments hot? But what does that mean? Consult the Googs. We're going to the Googs. What does Elihu mean when he says that your garments are hot to Job in chapter 37? Chapter 37, verse 17. Verse 17. Thank you, AI, for understanding, because that was not spelled correctly. Elihu is speaking to Job about the wonders of God's work in nature. He asks Job a question that highlights the limitations of human understanding. How thy garments are warm when he quieteth the earth by the south wind. God's power over nature. He controls the natural world, including weather. He can send the south wind known for bringing heat and even cause the earth to be still. While humans experience and react to this weather, feeling warm in their clothes, they cannot fully grasp the intricate process behind it or explain how God directs these phenomena. Gotcha. So, that's God's majesty, I guess, right? Teach us what we should say to him, for we can prepare nothing because of the darkness. We need light. Should he be told that I wish to speak? Probably. If a man were to speak, surely he would be swallowed up by God. Even now men cannot look at the light when it is bright in the skies. You're gonna go blind, John. Gotta keep reminding myself. When the wind has passed and cleared them, he comes from the north as golden splendor. With God is awesome majesty. As for the Almighty, we cannot find him. He is excellent in power, in judgment and abundant justice. He does not oppress, therefore men fear him. He shows no partiality to any who are wise of heart. You know, sometimes it's almost easier when people do oppress you, right? Because then you have more of a reason. But then when God doesn't oppress you, then he still gives you what you want, and then you still mess up, that should make you feel 10 times worse, dude, because that's literally all your fault, right? And that should help you to think better and to not do that. He shows no partiality to whom are wise of heart. Listen to your heart. Right? Listen to it, you know? It's telling you things. Do you think your heart feels things for no reason? Just 'cause? Think that's not part of natural selection? And like the human beings that we are at the end of the day? You don't think that's something that you're supposed to... You have a thing happen within your body and you think that's not for a reason? Not for a literal reason that you can be using in your life, right? You know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows. It's human experience. So, let's read 38. Then the Lord answered Job. Elihu brought the Lord. That's crazy. Out of the whirlwind. Oh, out of the whirlwind. I don't know. Where did this whirlwind come from? The whirlwind in the south? Dude, what the fudge? Where'd this whirlwind come from? I guess that's what Elihu was kind of saying, though, right? Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? He said, who is this idiot? Thinking he can talk. Now prepare yourself like a man to die, dude. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? You were dust. Tell me, if you have understanding, who determined its measurements? I did, sucker. That's right, Job. Sit down. Surely you know, Job. Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? I did. To where were its foundations fastened? Oh, that's right. I have them in my notebook at home. 'Cause I did it. You know, Elihu is just God's hype man. That's... Hey, yo. Or who laid its cornerstone? Jesus. But that's besides the point. When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Or who shut in the seas with doors? You? Apparently. That's more than I knew, I guess. When it burst forth and issued from the womb. When I made the clouds its garments. He made the sweater. The cloud sweaters. He made the clouds. Little knitted sweaters. How nice. The thick darkness, its swaddling band, when I fixed my limit for it. and set bars and doors. When I said, "This far you may come, but no further, and here you proud waves must stop." And the waves listened to him. And he made all the animals on the earth. And they listened to him. And all the stars, and all the weather. Right? And then he made human beings. And in the words of my dad, it all went downhill from there. That was the beginning of the end. The beginning to the end which we are now living today. Understand that, you know? Well, God is still here, right? Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place? You surely have not, Job. That it might take hold of the ends of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it. Can't we all wish? It takes on form like clay under a seal, and stands out like a garment. He's got a wax seal. That's crazy. From the wicked their light is withheld, and the upraised arm is broken. Have you entered the spring of the sea? Or have you walked in search of the depths? Have the gates of death been revealed to you? Do you know your purpose, Job? Is that? Is that what the God is saying to him right now? Have you comprehended the breadth of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. Oh. Have you been to the place where the sea begins? Have you walked in search of the depths? Have you dug, bro? Tell me where it comes from. Maybe that sentiment is what started like the human endeavor to explore, you know? Not to say we weren't doing that before, but interesting. I didn't think God would be talking. But, I mean, for God to also come in and, I don't know, kind of mimic, right? Because to say, right, that God is just better and that you should just understand your place, I think further validates the point that we don't need to know, which I think is maybe not what we want to hear. Which I don't think God cares about at the end of the day, right? You know? From what I've read in the Old Testament, I don't think he gives a single F. Right? Which is probably why he's still not talking to us. You know? Something. One day, I will get the old man upstairs to come down. And he'll come down and he'll have a conversation. And it's going to be a beautiful moment for everybody. So Job obviously doesn't know any of that, right? Because he's a dumb human being. Where is the way to the dwelling of light? Yeah, Job, go into space. Go find the sun for me. In darkness, where is its place? Do you even understand string theory, Job? Do you even know about entangled particles, dude? You know? Do you even know about the fission? Fusion? Reactions happening within the sun? I think, right? Helium is then created. It's fusion. What kind of reaction is happening within the sun? Fusion. The sun produces energy through a proton-proton chain reaction, which is a series of steps where hydrogen nuclei fuse together to form helium. That's what's going on within the sun. Do you know that, Job? I didn't think so. Sit down. Put your hand down. Where is the way to the dwelling of light, and darkness where is its place, that you may take it to its territory, that you may know the path to its home? Do you know it because you were born then, or because the number of your days is great? He said, "You're gonna lie to me, dude? Are you gonna lie straight to my face and tell me that you know? Because I know you don't know. I know you don't know because I did it. I'm the person who did it. I know you're such a liar," right? That you may take it to a territory, that you may know its path to its home. Do you know it because you were born then? Have you entered the treasury of snow? Have you seen the treasury of hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the time of battle and war? By what way is light diffused, or the east wind scattered over the earth? Does that mean there's going to be like a bunch of snow in the end times? 'Cause that's not cool. I don't like the cold. Who has divided a channel for the overflowing water, or a path for the thunderbolt, to cause it to rain on a land where there is no one, a wilderness in which there is no man, to satisfy the desolate waste, and cause to spring forth the growth of tender grass? Has the rain a father? Me. Or who has begotten the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice, and the frost of heavens, who gives birth? You know, not to completely disrespect God, but like, no wonder people weren't listening. If you gave me an explanation this long about why you were right, I wouldn't listen to you, right? Make it shorter. No offense, right? At the end of the day, to anybody, even God, but like, who needs to hear all this? You couldn't figure it out in a shorter way? You just talking to hear yourself talk? Whatever. Besides the point. I should be saying that to myself, right? I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. Which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the battle and war. So, nuclear winter. Exactly. Who has divided a channel for the overflowing water, or a path for the thunderbolt? To cause it to rain on a land where there is none, where there is no one, a wilderness in which there is no man, to satisfy the desolate waste, and cause to spring forth the growth of tender grass. Has the rain a father, or who has begotten the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice, and the frost of heaven, who gives it birth? The waters harden like stone, and the surface of the deep is frozen. Saying it's gonna get cold again, dude? Stop. Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades, or loose the belt of Orion? You gonna move the stars? And God's talking about astrology right now? That's wild. Can you bring out Mazaroth? Mazaroth? in its season? Can you bring out the constellations in their season? Or can you guide the great bear with its cubs? They know where they're going. Do you know the ordinance of the heavens? Can you set the domain over the earth? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that an abundance of water may cover you? Maybe this is another thing, right? Like, to be so impersonalized in the moment. The fact that the person that Job was mad about, well, I guess right at the end of the day, the only person he shouldn't have been mad, right? But like, I don't know. I don't know at the end of the day, right? But this seems a little harsh. Long-winded. Don't need these kind of responses. Sorry, Lord. I didn't like this one. Put me in Job's corners. And Job gets to respond. That's crazy. Okay. Keep reading. Or we'll never get there. You're right. This episode's far too long already. Can you bind the cluster? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that an abundance of water may cover you? Can you send out lightnings that they may go, and say to you, here we are? Who has put wisdom in the mind, or who has given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or who can pour out the bottles of heaven? When the dust hardens in clamps, and the clods cling together, can you hunt they prey for the lion? Can you hunt the prey for the lion? Or satisfy the appetite of young lions when they crouch in their dens, or lurk in their lairs to lie in wait? Who provides food for the raven when its young one cries to God and wander about for lack of food? This doesn't sound like God. And I'm sorry to say it, right? Again, late enough in the episode. But, like, I knew it in my soul, right? That I wouldn't like the ending. This doesn't make me like it anymore. I don't know. Like, I understand the friend saying it to him, but like, God talks and he puffs himself up and then he takes a fat dump, right, on Job and says, did you make the earth? No, you didn't do any of that. I do it all that. And I mean, if I'm his friends, also listening to God say all this stuff, like, I might be a little, like, what are you saying now? I don't know. But, right, at the end of the day, he does provide. I know he does all that. God, I don't know. Is this... But it doesn't matter what I want, and it doesn't matter what Job wants. And it's really all about just like accepting what God wants. But what does he want, right? Things seem a little muddled. The world is different than it used to be. They didn't take these things into account. Like maybe things are changing a little bit too fast now, right? Maybe the people who would technically be against this, right? They would have far too long to plan, right? The fires of God came down and destroyed Job's land, his sheep, and his crops. Ain't that some shit? Tell me how any of this is real. Just that book. The story, right? It's a story at the end of the day. This story. It's supposed to teach us something. Which is that God should be respected. And that you should have faith. I don't know. God needs to come back pretty soon. Thank you, God, for giving us another opportunity to learn, grow as human beings every single day, week, month, year, decade, eon, century. Hopefully we learn more than yesterday. Hopefully we come to a point where we can learn more than last 1,000 years. We can maybe take one step forward. Maybe we're in a completely different race now. I think that's more likely. So, find some peace.